Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the 2022 Connecticut Land Conservation Conference. My name is Amy Blaymore Patterson, and I am the Executive Director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. We have a very packed agenda, so I am going to jump right in. I want to acknowledge that we in Connecticut are on the traditional territory of the Mohegan, the Paugussett, the Wappinger, Pequot, and other indigenous peoples. We take this time to acknowledge the original caretakers of the land and encourage you to spend some time getting to know their cultures and the history of the lands on which you live, hike, and enjoy. Since canceling our conference at Wesleyan in March of 2020, this is our third virtual conference, but our first hybrid event. In addition to the 4 Zoom roundtables, including tonight's, we look forward to gathering outside with you this Saturday at People State Forest. There is some room for registration, so please take advantage of that. Take a look at our website and register if you can by tomorrow at noon. As with every conference, we rely tremendously on the generosity of our sponsors, and this year is no exception. We're grateful to our lead sponsors, the Nature Conservancy, the Trust for Public Land, Eversource Energy, Audubon Connecticut, Aquarian Water Company, Connecticut River Gateway Commission, Donosky and Associates, Karen and Fazio, Land Trust Alliance, Little Green Light, South Central Regional Water Authority, and at last count, about 44 other organizations, including many land trusts, which continue to support us as we offer this alternative conference format. Honestly, we have been overwhelmed by the level of support, and I cannot thank you enough for that. As I shared in our April e-news, which hopefully all of you received, CLCC recently conducted a land trust survey, and recruitment of younger board members was at the top of the list for land trust's organizational challenges. The concern comes up all the time in our conversations with land trust leaders. They are worried about who is going to succeed them to ensure that their land conservation vision is carried forward. What isn't as clear is how younger people feel about their role in land conservation and how and if they envision themselves taking charge of that perpetual responsibility. So this year's conference is a step forward in our efforts to gain that insight. Planned by an amazing group of younger conservationists from around the state, our goal is to give them and their peers a platform to share their land conservation vision and their ideas for action to be the change they wish to see in the world, to use that quote, which I really love. But where does that passion come from? All of us have a story about how we got involved with land conservation, and almost without exception, it relates to experiences we had in our youth. Tonight, we are honored to have the unique opportunity to listen to a conversation between emerging land conservation leaders and some of their very special mentors. I've had the pleasure of working with some of these young people and their mentors, while others I have just met for the first time through this conference. And I will tell you, they are all incredible people and their work is incredibly inspiring. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the program over to our facilitator, Marianne Jorgensen. Marianne currently works as the coordinator for Academics for Land Protection in New England, or Alpine, at the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. Thank you so much, Marianne, and to all of our speakers, welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy. Welcome, everyone, and thank you to the Connecticut Land Conservation Council for inviting me to participate in this evening's presentation. I'm honored to be here with this wonderful panel tonight, and thank you to the audience for being here as well. I'm, as Amy said, Marianne Jorgensen. I'm the program manager of Alpine, which stands for Academics for Land Protection in New England. Alpine is a network of academic institutions that are committed to increasing the pace of land protection in New England to address the region's environmental challenges and to support nature and people. Alpine seeks to expand the role that academic institutions can play in conserving the New England landscape by sharing experiences and resources among faculty and staff, students, administrations, and alumni. Alpine is based at the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, which is located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's funded by the Heisted Foundation, which is based in Reading, Connecticut, and it's a program of the Wildlands and Woodlands Initiative out of the Harvard Forest. So in this evening's presentation, we'll hear from young people that have chosen to participate in a variety of conservation projects through their high school clubs, internships, and professional positions, and from their mentors that have guided them through these experiences. Through a series of questions and open discussions, we'll highlight the impact that a mentor-mentee relationship can have for young people now and for their future plans, and what makes for a successful relationship, and then how Land Trust can connect with younger people and provide the opportunities for future conservationists. So now I'll have each of the panelists introduce themselves. I'll do this in sets of mentee mentors. And so let's start with Brennan and Lori.
Hi, I'm Brennan Wilkins. I am a senior at the Marvelwood School. I am a Kent Land Trust intern and a Yukon Natural Resources Conservation Ambassador alumni.
Hi, I'm Lori Doss. I'm a Kent Land Trust board member, science department chair at Marvelwood School, and a community partner to numerous Yukon Natural Resource Conservation Academy projects over the years.
Great, thank you. And then Grace and Justin.
Hi, I'm Grace Karam from Suffield High School. I'm here with Justin Caput, who served as my teacher and advisor while I was a student at Suffield High School and a member of my school sustainability council.
Great. And then Sylvie and Jason and Herb.
Would you like me to introduce myself, Marianne?
Oh, I'm sorry, Justin. And yes, of course.
That's okay. My name is Justin Caput. I'm a teacher at Suffield High School in Suffield, Connecticut. I'm a board member of COEA, the Connecticut Outdoor and Environmental Educators. I am a Sea Change Fellow for the North American Association of Environmental Educators, and I am the proud advisor of the Suffield Sustainability Council, where I work with Grace.
Thanks.
Okay. I'll start us. I'm Sylvia Boucher. I'm the Sandy Breslin Conservation Fellow for Connecticut Land Conservation Council and a very recent graduate of the Masters of Public Administration program at UConn Hartford. Thanks, Jason. And I worked with Herb Virgo last spring semester when I was an undergrad at UConn through an urban semester program that UConn does with the pilot season at the Urban Ecology Wellness Center.
Hi everyone, my name is Jason. I use he, him pronouns. I'm currently a first-year Masters of Environmental Science student at Yale School of the Environment, and similar to Sylvia, had the awesome opportunity to work with Herb last summer as an intern in the pilot season of the Urban Ecology Wellness Center up in Hartford.
Good evening. My name is Herb Virgo. I'm the founder and executive director of the Keeney Park Sustainability Project and the founder of the Urban Ecology Wellness Center at Keeney Park.
Great. Thank you, everybody. So let's go right into our first discussion, and that's just give us some background, talk about how you arrived on the path that led you to your mentor and to the organization, starting with the mentees, talking about that. Anybody want to start?
I'll go first.
Great, Brennan, thanks.
So I grew up in the rural area of the Northwest corner. I have family in the area. I was into nature, but I wasn't exactly fully knowledgeable of my surroundings and sort of took nature for granted. I was not until I started to participate in programs at my middle school and high school that I began to fully appreciate nature. What drew me to working with Ms. Doss and was her commitment and enthusiasm for what she loved to do. She loved working with birds, so I became involved with her work as the years went on. We met in my high school orientation, and she asked me about my interest in birds. Then she asked me to join her bird banding community service team. My first summer at high school, I volunteered to help the Land Trust manage the purple martin colonies. I was also a banding assistant at the school and the Land Trust MAPS banding station. MAPS stands for Monitoring Avian Product and Survivorship, and is a long-term project under the guidance of the Institute for Broad Populations. Ms. Doss told me how the MAPS map standing data helped save the land surrounding the school, which is now land trust property, which hooked me into being involved in this research. Ms. Doss has helped me in many ways through my 4 years at Marvelwood. Through my classwork and community service program, she helped me become more aware of my natural surroundings and how different species that require different requirements. I never realized the importance of managing habitats for different species prior to working with her. It was neat learning all these different species and getting to see these birds up close. She also helped me get involved in many different projects, like the project I did for the Yukon NRCA Conservation Ambassador Program on swallows, and the organizations like the Kent Land Trust. I would not be as knowledgeable of the environment without her guidance.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. I think what enticed me to work with students like Brennan and other students was when the conservation organizations around Marvelwood, when we moved from Cornwall to Kent, came to us and urgently needed our help to try and stop housing developments that were going to occur on about 250 acres to the north and 250 acres to the south of the property. And that is when I came up with the idea it'd be great to partner schools with conservation organizations and land trusts to help collect data, because field research can be very time consuming. And, you know, that is how we sort of got started, was trying to document the fauna, primarily the birds, to stop the development.
Wonderful. Anybody else?
I'll go next. So I always loved nature, especially animals, but I wasn't very outdoorsy. And I knew I wanted to help animals, but I didn't want to be a vet, so I wasn't sure how. But in 9th grade science class, I learned about the damage that pollution and climate change causes to animals. So I figured saving their habitats would be a very effective way to help them. And I think learning about the injustices done to animals and the environment really got me passionate about and interested in climate change. And the Suffield Sustainability Council was my school's first environmental club. I joined it when it was created in my sophomore year by Mr. Kaput, and I've been involved ever since.
Great, thanks, Grace.
You know, in terms of enticing people to jump into this kind of work, you know, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. It's hard sometimes to get young people to jump into these kind of things. And I think one of the things that really galvanized us at the time where we got our liftoff was the wellspring of youth environmentalists that were kind of popping up all over the world. And really that provided a springboard for me to kind of say, like, all right, well, what's my role as a teacher here? You know, we have a bunch of kids that are starting to activate, really want to get involved in doing something about climate change. They feel as though they've been disenfranchised and removed from the process, rightly so. And how can I do something about that? So, you know, part of it is going on the announcements in the morning and trying to get people to jump in and just constantly staying involved and trying to keep my finger on the pulse of students in the school. We have a lot of really great kids in our school, and I noticed that once they started to feel like they were doing something real, they started to jump in with 2 feet. And I think that's probably the biggest part is providing students something that has a lot more gravity than board work and hypotheticals, you know, and that's the work that we do that I think is really powerful.
Yeah, and Justin, could you just talk about, did you end up partnering with certain organizations in the community and so forth to work that the clubs worked with?
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of tie-ins there. You know, when we did our large event right around about 3 weeks ago, Grace, we had everybody from People's Action for Clean Energy to DEEP, Connecticut Autobahn, Massachusetts Autobahn was really, really helpful at Arcadia Wildlife Center. They partnered with the Wild Center in the Adirondacks, and through the climate action planning process and sort of the youth climate summits that are happening all over the country at this point, it really provided a springboard for us to understand how to move forward. Now, our event was a little different, but our day 2 event borrowed an awful lot from some of those other previously established programs.
Great, thanks. And then how about from the third group? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. It's kind of scary how similar our stories are with Grace. That was my same situation. Loved animals, knew I couldn't be a vet, saw an article about elephant poaching, and that's how I became my undergraduate major was environmental studies. And throughout the course, or throughout my time as an undergraduate in that program, I knew I wanted to work with nonprofits in some capacity, but I hadn't really had much exposure. And then my senior year, when COVID hit, I had known about the urban semester, which is basically just before COVID, it's supposed to be kind of like a study abroad program where you live and work with an organization in Hartford. But in COVID times, it was strictly virtual, you're just working with the organization completely remote. And that's how a professor kind of linked me with Herb. And it was my first exposure to nonprofit, and I didn't have any expectations, but working with the Urban Ecology Wellness Center and Herb exceeded any expectations I had. And it really showed me about the importance of community and like uplifting each other, and just having that relationship building is something I really learned with the nonprofit, with Urban Ecology and the pilot season, and reaching out to partners, and just how big of a community Hartford really is. So yeah, I just kind of started off with just kind of figuring out how to get involved with nonprofits, and then this kind of came to me as like a gift, and it was great. It was better than the first exposure I could ask for.
Great. Thanks, Zoe.
And I think my experience in getting involved in the environment was a little bit different. I realized at some point in my young years that I grew up in a community without a lot of that outdoor access, with our rivers being polluted, with our fire hydrants being our beaches. We would play in the fire hydrants in the summer, with the grass patch between the sidewalk and the street being our forests. And that sort of was the outdoors for us. And we would play up and down the block in this concrete jungle. And having that understanding, when I went to undergrad, I knew that I wanted to focus on a lot of the climate and environmental injustices that plague communities like mine back in New Jersey. Through that, I joined the Doris Duke Conservation Scholar Program, where the first summer I was doing research on green infrastructure, and the second summer I was placed at the Urban Ecology Wellness Center with Herb through their internship program, through the Doris Duke program, which was awesome. And it sort of allowed me to start bridging the gaps between acknowledging that my experience of growing up in this very urban community wasn't necessarily isolated, that is an experience of others, but that there are very unique ways in engaging green space and engaging public health and engaging the healing powers of nature that I hope Herb will talk about, that I've really been carrying with me even now through my time during my first year here living in Connecticut.
Great, thanks, Jason.
So yes, I don't know if they were enticed or if they were sentenced to an internship with me in Keeney Park, but it was a great experience nonetheless. We've been lucky to have a number of UConn faculty on our board, so they're constantly connecting us to different departments, students, and opportunities to help support our mission. But this time was especially important because we were transitioning from one program to starting the pilot season of another program. And I wasn't sure how we were going to pull it off, but the stars aligned, and I was sent these two amazing young people who basically carried us through this transition. And my approach was, I really don't have anything to teach you guys, but I have a problem that I need to help solving, you know what I mean? And then that is exactly what they did. Gave them some opportunities, had them organize our whole organization, and really, just really carry us over the finish line with that pilot season. And we're getting ready to start our second year, and the blueprints and the systems and the things that were put in place by these two young people last year are the ones we're using this year again. And I've also been planting the seeds. Hey, when you guys are done, the Urban Ecology Wellness Center will be a great place to come back and work. So that was part of my intentions as well. But overall, it was a pleasant experience, and hoping to continue the relationship with these two young people as they pursue their careers and their dreams.
That's great. Thank you so much. It's great to hear everybody's how they get into it. This is the wonderful thing about conservation. I think it can come from so many different places and so many different backgrounds, and there's a place for everyone. So let's pause for a minute and get some questions from the audience.
Yeah, thanks so much. That was a great introduction. And I want to thank at least Lori, and maybe others of you have done this as well. And I would encourage any of you that are not speaking, and you can kind of multitask a little bit and follow the chat if you want to respond to some of the questions. I'm speaking to the speakers now. Please put your comments and answers in the chat. It's really super helpful, and it's very interesting and stimulating for conversation. The first question that we have is, were any of you mentees involved in Envirothon in high school? Go ahead, Brennan.
I'm currently part of my school's Envirothon team. Yeah, so I've done it for since my sophomore year, and I've had a blast doing it. It's really informational, and it's a lot of fun, like learning about the environment, while also hanging out with other kids at your school are interested in the same thing.
And I might add, Amy, Brennan's being a little modest because he was on the state winning team last year, which represented the state. So.
Great job. Yeah.
Brennan. Another question that's.
Can I jump on that, Amy, too?
Oh, please. Yeah, please do.
As a student, I was, this is many years ago. I think I was on the third Envirothon season, or whatever you want to call it. As a student, I can attest to how powerful that experience was for me, kind of being around those kind of people. And I think it's one of the reasons that I ended up majoring in wildlife ecology at University of Maine, just because, you don't know where those people are. You kind of exist as kind of like an anomaly in your community. You're like, yeah, I really think birds are cool, but I don't want to admit it, in front of a lot of people. And then next thing you know, you're surrounded by all these people that do. So such a cool thing.
Any other comments on the Envirothon? So if not, I'm going to move on to the next question here. What additional things can we as land trusts do to support young people in considering this field as a viable profession? Anybody want to jump in on that one? Mentees or mentors? Lori did put some info or a comment in the chat, but I think it'd be really nice to hear from others on that. What additional things can we as land trusts do to support young people in considering this field as a viable profession?
Jason, yeah.
Yeah, I can hop in. I think, as someone who acknowledges that the conservation field has been very historically white, that there has been a lot of need, and then I guess this push towards having programs that do support Black, Indigenous, and other young people of color into entering these fields, and not just from like hiring practices, but also like supporting them through these organizations, supporting through mentorship, supporting through adequate pay, and there's a lot of diversity pathway that I think needs to be fleshed out through this field.
Great. And there was a question, Amy, also about what is environment. Yeah.
We saw that, and Justin put the link right into the chat, so you can check that out. There's another question here, and then maybe we'll move on. What was it about, and this is to the mentees, what was it about having a mentor that enabled you to take your experiences farther? And I think we are going to get to that maybe in the next question. So that might be a good segue, Marianne, and I'll keep tracking these questions and we'll come back to some of them.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, Sylvie.
Yeah, I'll say, like, the experience working with Herb has definitely opened opportunities for me. I honestly, because the way I got into CLCC is through the MPA program, through that they have internships throughout the state of Connecticut. And like, I don't even know if I would have gotten hired if it wasn't for my connection with Herb. And it's just, and like having his reference and he's just very well known in the community, and just working with him has opened so many doors like CLCC, and it's been just very valuable. And like I'm just so appreciative because he is just such a star in the Hartford community, and I feel very lucky. He's being modest by shaking his head, but I feel very lucky that I had the opportunity to work very closely with him.
Fantastic. So I think what we'll do is go into a little bit more about these relationships and why they're successful, and what about them has been, particularly meaningful. Describe the experience of working with each other, if you would, so people can get a sense of what it means to have a successful mentor-mentee relationship. Anybody want to start? Grace, how about you? Want to start?
Sure, yeah. So my mentor, Mr. Kaput, I think what's very successful is he walks the walk. He's an activist, environmental scientist. He has an electric car. So he inspires me to follow in his footsteps. In my club, he always gives us, the students, a lot of power and responsibility. He lets us make decisions about what projects we want to pursue, has us take leadership roles in organizing and planning events. Like for our Walk to the Heart event that we just hosted, he had us attend meetings with administrators. So we got to, he allowed us to step up and take a leadership role, and kind of go out of our comfort zone with that. And he also introduced us to learning experiences. Like we went to climate summits, and he introduced me to a global youth engagement program, which was very out of my comfort zone. I was talking with college kids from other countries, but it was very educational and very rewarding. And then I also started attending more webinars and reading books about environmental racism and environmental law. And these are things I learned when I went to summits that he recommended, and such. So these experiences really exceeded my expectations, because I learned practical skills of coordinating things, because he gave us so much responsibility. And then also just how much since so much is connected to climate change. So I really just got to learn about other subjects, find where my interests were, because he provided so many opportunities.
Great, thanks, Grace. Justin, do you want to weigh in on what you think it makes a good relationship? What are you looking at with students when you work with students?
I like what Herb said, that it's kind of, there's not that much that I feel like we can teach a lot of times. Sometimes the old people just need to get out of the way, and let the young people have the driver's seat. I'm a really big proponent of bringing them in on every single decision and every single part of it, because when we were planning this thing from the beginning, this massive climate event that we had, where we had over 400 teachers and staff involved and stuff, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a teacher. That's my job, to teach environmental science, teach about birds and plants and all that kind of stuff. And so much of the stuff that we were doing was brand new to me. And I had this incredible repository of really bright, heartfelt, energetic, imaginative people. And every time we'd come up against some stumbling block where I'd be like, oh man, they won't let us shut down the road, we can't walk here, the kid's hand would fire up and be like, well, what about this? What about that? They just have an ability to think outside the box in a way that's the kind of linear life of paying mortgages and all that kind of stuff kind of just makes you kind of more in a box, So I guess that's my thoughts on it are include them all the time in every part.
Great advice. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, and I think, can I just get a quick repeat of the question because I'm jotting down so many notes.
Yeah, I am too.
Everybody's saying.
So we're talking about sort of what the relationship between you and Herb, the relationship with the mentor and mentee, what is particularly successful about that, and what makes a successful relationship? Talking more about that.
Absolutely. I think the first thing that I appreciate most about Herb was like getting to know Herb as like a human outside of like the mentor mentee role. And maybe that's something that you build into your mentor mentee capacity, is like that space, and not just see each other in the capacities that you operate in the professional space, but also having time to unwind and talk about how we live our day-to-day lives. I think like in terms of more formal mentorship, I think setting expectations of what you want to get out of the relationship from both ends. You know, what does the mentor expect? What does the mentee expect? And also the one thing I really value is sort of like the multi-generational nature of mentoring that like, yes, as I think as much as young people, maybe I can speak for myself, as much as I like being handed the keys, it's kind of like I also want to make sure that I have somebody in the passenger seat with me to make sure that I'm driving the car the right direction. Or that I'm able to build off the lessons of the people that have come before me, because it's never going to be a single generation fight. It's always going to be multi-generational. And I think that's probably the biggest thing about mentorship that I really appreciate.
Great. Sylvia, do you want to add to that in that specific, talking about that? You talked a little bit about it before. Was there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Jason. I think it was very easy, and it was always very positive and uplifting having a conversation with Herb. So I think that made me motivated to want to, other than like it being very mission driven organization, just the relationship made me want to do the work well and be involved. And it was just, I agree. I think with Justin's, what he said, I definitely had that experience with Herb. He made me feel very valued and wanted my input on stuff I didn't even really know much about, like website design, and he was always asking my opinion. So it made me feel really involved and like I was a part of it, and just it was made me feel like my opinion was valued, which definitely helped me to have this relationship.
Great, thanks. Herb, you want to talk? Yeah, about.
Sure. So, I mean, it was meaningful for me and for KPSP. I mean, anytime you can contribute to, you know, a young person's, you know, dreams or aspirations or their career path, it's always a rewarding experience. I think the thing that was most successful about this internship experience is that they were both very self-motivated. And then one of the things that we often look for when matching interns with projects is not only do their academic goals align with our missions and our organization's objectives, but do their personal goals align as well? The things that motivate them internally, do those things align with our mission? And I think with Sylvia and Jason, both of those things were present. And I think that's what contributed to a successful experience. And then also just plenty of communication, right? Like weekly meetings. You know, there were many times when I'm like, hey guys, we got to do this all differently. We're going to just scrap that plan and we're going to go in a whole completely different direction. Just you know, just ride with me. We'll be all right. And having those frequent conversations, I think, are extremely helpful. But you know, if I could narrow it down to one important point, is making sure that their personal goals, in addition to their academic goals, align with our organization's missions and objectives.
I think that's a great point, Herb. Yeah, having that aligned, terrific. How about you, Brennan?
Well, I can say I absolutely have enjoyed my experience working with Ms. Doss, and knowing that the data that I have collected is not only helping the land trust with habitat management, but also being used by the larger scientific community like the Connecticut Bird Atlas Project and the Purple Martin Conservation Association to influence conservation initiatives in the future. For example, Ms. Doss has always taught me to use all my senses in the forest, and I never understood why until one day at the Audrey and Robert Tobin Preserve this past summer. I noticed a rather large bird, yellow bird, with a funny song that I didn't recognize. Miss Doss was focusing, banding a yellow-throated vireo, and I called out to her, "Hey, which species is that? I've never seen it before." I pointed to Miss Doss, and she immediately jumped out of her chair with a vireo in her hand and said, "I think that might be the endangered yellow-breasted chat. Get out BirdNet and record it." So I did. And we were able to get the audio, which was verified by an ornithologist in Yukon, that we indeed documented the first one in the preserve.
Wow, great.
Yeah, it was a really fun experience.
That sounds like it.
I think one thing to keep in mind for land trusts is that you can have formal partnerships and informal partnerships. It could be a summer-long internship, a week-long internship. It could just be going out for a day. Over the years, what has worked well with me and the kids that have been the most successful is trying to find that common curiosity, that sort of desire and commitment to learn about the environment, a willingness to communicate not only with each other, but with others in the community, via social media posts and other things like that, and the pictures you've taken. So they sort of jump on this sort of discovery bandwagon, and they get excited about what's in their own community. And I just think, you know, we can take the time to learn from each other. I learn things from Brennan all the time, and he learns things from me, and that an old lady can learn something from a young guy, and vice versa. So I think, like Jason said, those intergenerational connections too are important.
That's great. Thanks. Can some of you talk a little bit about, as a result of that experience, you know, what changed for you? Has it changed your outlook? What have you learned about yourself through this experience? How about you, Sylvie? You want to start?
Sure. I think I learned a lot about everything in myself, because this is my first exposure to being in a nonprofit. So I've definitely learned I can coordinate people with emails, and that's definitely been helpful to me with CLCC. But other than like the professional perks of nonprofit work and building relationships, I just think that I learned I want to focus on being mission driven, and that you want to be something that's rewarding. Like, it's, even though I was only there for the pilot season, and it's really, I love to see that it's in the second year, and it's just really, I don't know, it's made my motivation a lot better, because it's just, there's so many things I want to do, and it's kind of helped me zero in on what I want to help people, and I want to help them connect to the environment, connect to nature, and allow them to see all the benefits and all the wellness that can come with nature. And I don't even know if I knew that before, like working with the Wellness Center, how important it is to connect everybody, no matter who you are, in all areas, with nature and all the healing benefits to it. And so I think it's just kind of made me kind of figure out what I want to do, because environmental studies is very broad, but connecting with people and food and nature is just so important. And it's something I want to be involved in it in any way I can in my career. So I've definitely learned that, which I had no idea before starting the work at the Urban Ecology Wellness Center.
That's great. Thanks, Sylvie. How about you, Grace?
Yeah, similar to Sylvie, I think it helped me figure out what I want to do as a career. I didn't really have any idea before I joined the club at my school, and it helped me narrow in. It's the Suffield Sustainability Council, and I'm going to major in sustainable development. So it's definitely very applicable. Everything I've learned in my club under Mr. Kaput, how to coordinate things, so practical skills, and then also just social issues and economic, and how they're all related. under the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. All of it's like led me here. So it's been very educational.
Great. Jason, how about you?
One of the biggest things that I think I've taken to, even that I was having a conversation with or about earlier today, was sort of figuring out how to align my values of change with the work that I do or the work that I want to do. And I feel that that was such a big shift in my brain that I had last summer when I worked with Herb. It felt like it was a great experience for me to not only know that, yes, I'm doing good work and helping this organization get off the ground, but also like it was aligned with the values of change that I had, and not only providing access to nature, but also just working with the populations that we were working with in Hartford. I also think that experience helped me think more about how I can sort of leverage a lot of my common experiences and a lot of my identities in engaging in new communities that I enter in. Like I mentioned before, I've only been living in Connecticut for almost a year now. Was living in Ohio for 4 years, was born and raised in Jersey. So I've kind of been all over, but then having these opportunities where I'm able to still find those values within myself that can relate to people across those boundaries are really, really important. And I think that would probably be it.
That's great. How about you, Brennan?
What I learned about myself while volunteering and interning with the Land Trust and Ms. Doss is I'm very observant, but I'm also very distracted. And I make tons of mistakes where I'm distracted and unfocused. But I've learned from each and every one of them, and which only made me wiser and stronger in the long run. Ms. Doss says the best way to really learn from your mistakes is to move on, and and to learn from them. And my confidence and leadership skills.
I think we froze Brennan. Brennan's frozen.
Of ecosystems, I love it even.
Oh, there he is.
I'll text him. He may need to rejoin, but let me text him.
Or you can take the video down. Any comments by the mentors about this in terms of how this has affected you and your organization? You touched on it a little bit, but anything else to add, Justin?
I feel like I'm on a learning curve with the students that I work with. In terms of an organization and mission-driven kind of stuff, I work at a high school, so I think our scenario is a little different than some of the other people that are here, but kind of building all of these things together has been a really powerful experience for me, and learning as they learn how to do all of the networking and designing websites and all of that kind of stuff has been excellent for me as well.
Marianne, can I jump in?
You sure can.
I think too that, not to underestimate the power of community science, and to realize that data that is collected by interns or volunteers with the Land Trust can significantly contribute to local and global scientific projects. For example, some of the work Brennan and I were involved in with banding, that data was contributed to the Connecticut Bird Atlas Project, which in turn will have the potential to make, impact with statewide, land conservation needs and protection. I think, contributing to eBird hotspots. So after Brennan and I leave and the rest of us leave, that there's a database, an electronic database that can be accessed for others. That's an important contribution. And as we have climate change and other things are happening, to have these baselines to see how, the fauna and flora may be changing on land trusts. And, even with the Purple Martin Project, the impact to help international toxicology studies to determine where these purple martins are picking up mercury. Is it the breeding, the migrating, or the wintering grounds? And for students to have this opportunity to help with this type of data collection through land trust and internships, and to contribute it to the larger scientific community, I think is golden.
Yeah, really. Agreed, Lori. Yeah. Herb, you have anything to add?
Sure. I was going to say, I mean, Jason and Sylvie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what I saw over the course of time was a deeper commitment or a double down on community service, right? Being connected to a group of people and being able to look at their needs and put their needs first. And how do we navigate the needs of these communities amidst all of these political and other systems that we have to navigate? And I think I saw Sylvie from the beginning become more confident, because I'm like, hey, Sylvie, this is a list of people. You need to reach out to all these people. And she's like, so just call them and talk. So it started there. And then over time, and she just started reaching out to people. And Jason, you know, he definitely has talked a lot to me about where he's from and his experience growing up. And I'm hoping that him seeing what we're doing here in our community, you know, inspires him to want to do more for the communities that he grew up in as well. So those are some of the things that I saw kind of happen over time.
Yeah, that's great, Herb. Thank you. So I know I have to keep this moving. Are there questions at this point, Amy, for this part? And then
Yeah.
we'll
I'm going to stay invisible because every time I click that button, I have an enormous face on the screen. So I'll stay invisible. Here's one. It's to the mentees. Are there particular skills, hard or soft skills, you see as most important to build as you grow in your careers? Anybody? Skills?
I think they touched on some of them. I mean, the communication skills, the relationship building that was talked about. Does anybody want to expand on that? These are the skills you don't realize that you have, and then you have to start using them, and they really are skills. I mean, you don't get graded on them, right? It's not your academic background. Yeah, Lori.
For Marianne, I would just add mapping skills, GIS. I think that's an important skill for folks and young people going in to various environmental fields, is to really learn how to use GIS, geographic information systems, and mapping.
And I'll add to that too, just with Sylvie having been our Sandy Breslin Conservation Fellow for the last year and continuing on, when she was talking about communications and Herb was saying, well, just get out there and start talking to people. And I put that in the chat that Sylvie, you know, Sylvie was dealing with legislators and their aides and scheduling meetings. And, you know, these are skills that don't necessarily come naturally to a lot of people. And I think that those types of experiences, starting with the work she did with you, Herb, was really, really terrific for her when she came and worked with us at CLCC and continues to do that. So I think communications is essential.
Yeah.
There's another question here. It says, for the mentees and building on Sylvie's comments, what is the primary driver of your environmental action? Is it more about climate change and the current climate crisis, or your personal feelings about nature, science, something primal, internal? I am also hearing how important it is to all of you to be able to share your passion with others. That gives me such hope.
Brennan, yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly for me, it's mostly based on like my interests of the environment that pushes me forward. Like I guess in a way it's like for like climate change and like global warming and all that. Kind of helps me, kind of pushes me forward and say like, okay, like this is what I can do to help, and that really pushes me to do more for it.
Yeah, great.
But it's mostly based on my love of the environment and me not wanting to let it go.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Yeah, Jason.
I feel that for me, it's a big mix of all of the sub questions within the bigger question. It's definitely like an innate sort of responsibility or sense of care that I feel that I have to myself, my family, my communities that I belong to. I also think that it's acknowledging that like that Earth is going to be okay whether or not humans are on it or not, and this fight is for the fight for human survival. In the same way that people like to glorify space exploration, we need to pour that same energy into caring for our Earth and making sure that our communities that are most burdened communities are able to be part of that just transition and at the forefront of our climate change solutions. So it's a big mix of lived experience, lived identity, and the access that I've had to the knowledge that I've had access to by gaining more education, and putting all that together to create some sort of path.
Great. Anybody else? Yeah, Sylvie.
Yeah, I agree with Ben and Jason. It's for me, it's just as simple as I know how I feel when I'm in nature and how great it is for me and how just all the benefits it is. So I just know how like fortunate I am to have exposure to it, and I just feel like everybody should have that opportunity. And so that's like my innate thing. And you know, I'm like an empathetic person, so I just want to do what's right by everyone and for the people and planet and Earth. So I do think having that innate drive and motivation is the key. And I think most people have it if they're fortunate to have that exposure to nature. And some people just need that, and then they'll understand all the benefits that have to do with nature and, you know, why it's so important to protect it and advocate for it.
Great. Amy, are there any more questions?
No, we can keep moving on, but
We'll
I
keep
am
moving.
encouraging people to ask those questions. I can't get enough of this. So keep the questions coming.
Great. Herb, yeah.
I know that was a question for the mentees, but I wanted to add, after Sylvia's comment, for me, what brought me to this environmental work was not even about the environment, right? It was about seeing a community completely traumatized by its history and its experiences, and watching what nature did to those people and how it helped them reduce the trauma in their lives. So we all got to the same point. It's just interesting that they came from different directions, which is pretty fascinating.
That's great. Good point. All right, so let's talk. The next thing we're going to talk about are your future plans. How has this influenced what you want to do in the future? I'm sure people are interested in hearing that. What avenues did this experience open up for you, and where do you see yourself in the future? Let's start with Jason.
I was chuckling a little bit in the corner here because I think that's always a question that like grad students freak out every time they hear, what do you want to do now? Like, what do you want to do from here now? But I think the one thing that I'll bring back this comment from before, but for me, it's just about figuring out, and over the next year that I still have in my graduate program and the other experiences that I'll hopefully be getting, is just still continuing to align the values of change that I hold close to myself in the work that I do. And I don't know what that looks like right now. Like I have a summer research project that I'm going to be working on where I'll be doing looking at like community-based organizations and emergency resource distribution throughout Connecticut. So that'll be a project that I get to work on. But in terms of like more long-term plans, I kind of take it slower steps for me right now, because I think chewing off a big piece of what the future holds while I'm working on a lot of these bigger projects can be a little tough. But I feel like I have the right support in place to get where I need to go or where I want to go, but I don't know exactly where that's going to lead me just yet.
And that would be weird at your age if you knew exactly where you wanted to go. I mean, there are some, but that's right. That's a good answer. Grace, how about you?
So this work has completely shaped my future. I'm going to study sustainable development at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland this fall, and I definitely would not be doing this if I didn't join the Sustainability Council. Mr. Kaput introduced me to a program where I learned more about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and I met people from other countries. And I think this really increased my interest in the field of sustainable development, and then also in different cultures. And then also, like Mr. Caput had us read Braiding Sweetgrass, which is about Native American wisdom, and just things like they had a different mentality. And now like I can incorporate that into my work, be aware of like indigenous communities. So I think like all these little things that I've experienced now are really like impactful for my future career.
Great. Thanks, Grace. And how about you, Brennan?
So I've had a lot of interests growing up, but the opportunities I had doing research and field work centered around birds, and through my NOCA project on swallows and my experience as a Kent Land Trust intern has encouraged me to pursue something like environmental studies. I'm attending Paul Smith's College in upstate New York, which is a perfect place to cement my knowledge about various environmental related fields, and I can turn my passion to a career. I'm primarily interested in wildlife biology and forest management.
Great. Sounds great. How about you, Sylvie?
Yeah, that's the question that I don't have a set answer to. And I don't think I have ever. But right now, I just graduated from Econ Hartford with an MPA, and I'm continuing doing work with CLCC over the summer. So I'll still be around, and I'm actually working on a farm this summer, just because I want that deeper connection to the earth and learning those skills. But then after that, this summer of CLCC and firm, I got accepted to a program in Iceland, and it's a graduate program for the environment and natural resources. And I want to continue to broaden my perspective and just learn other things beyond what I know. And I just think, so I'm sure Grace can agree with this, like having that a broad experience, I think is so valuable. So that's where I'm at now. And after that, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's going to be something still involved with advocating for people and the environment and nature and all that jazz.
That sounds really great from everybody. So how about you, mentors? What advice do you have for your mentees, and what else you've been hearing, and how does it make you feel when you see the work that you're doing with these students, and they go on to do these wonderful things? Lori, how about you?
Well, at my age, it makes me feel really good knowing that I'm passing the torch, especially now that we have thriving purple martin colonies in Kent. And that's a lot of young people now who can take up that baton and carry on the research, down the road when I'm no longer able to do that. I think one thing that, sometimes when we do formal education, we sometimes allow our sense of curiosity to be diminished. So I would tell, the students is never let anybody take that sense of curiosity away from you. Always ask questions. You may think they're stupid questions, but they're really not, and they could lead to really important discoveries. So keep that sense of curiosity, document everything you find. If you can record an audio or you can take a picture, you never know when it might be important. And learning how to communicate your discoveries, not, both in the scientific, field, but also to the general public in ways that really get them excited. And then the other thing I would say in working with various professionals who have been in this field is that rather than hiring someone with this wonderful GPA, but no field experience, they'd rather hire the average kid who has a ton of field experience. So use your summers throughout high school, at the collegiate level. Go out, engage yourself in a variety of internships. And this is going to help shape who you are, and this is going to help make you more marketable because people know you can work in the field.
That is great, Lori. Thanks. How about you, Justin?
I just jotted down a couple of notes. Those are really great pearls of wisdoms there, Lori. I love the idea of reaching out and connecting, because you don't know who's ready to reach back at the other end. Sometimes opportunity arises from sources you just never thought would be possible. Like, I think there are a lot of people that are involved in this work that are looking for young people to connect with. So that would be one big piece of advice, is to just keep reaching out and trying to build that network of people that you know. Also, be bold. Life is one of those things that you really have to take on. It's not, you don't get a second run. This is your only try here. So all those opportunities that come up that you don't take, they may not happen again. So as you're moving through college and you see some amazing speaker, go see that person. And then at the end of the speech, be the person that goes up and talks to them. Be the person that goes up to your professor and says, "Hey, how are you? My name's Grace. It's nice to meet you." So that boldness kind of empowers for future boldness. So keep it rolling. And then be open as well to new experiences and new opportunities, and travel. I mean, there's people here that have much bigger guts than I did when I was a kid, going to Scotland and Iceland and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's pretty incredible. So you keep doing that. Keep having big dreams and staying open to new ideas and thoughts. These things are kind of cliche, but they do pay the path for a successful life, I think.
That's great, Justin. Thank you. Herb, do you have anything to add to that?
I think they covered it all. No, I really agree with the comment about the networks too, though, because I mean, once you've been in this industry or this field for 20 years, and you're noticing that all the folks that you're at conferences with are people that you met 20 years ago, either in school or and you start to think, well, what could we have accomplished if we stayed connected over all this time and shared resources and shared information? So those networks are extremely important. But one person once told me that, nature is the great common denominator, right? So let that be your compass. In the world we live in today, with all the things that are happening, we need as many things out here that draw us together as opposed to tearing us apart or separating us. And nature is that, so as you move and maneuver through the world, let that be your compass, and let that be what guides you in, whatever direction you choose.
Great advice. Super. So let's go to sort of, are any more comments anyone wants to make? And then I think we could move to final thoughts.
Marianne, can I make a comment?
You sure can.
And this comes from many years ago when Marblewood, I'd love to see partnership schools between urban areas and rural areas, and share each other's experiences, because I think it would only strengthen us collectively as a whole. And I remember we'd bring the Sand Road Elementary School kids out to Marblewood, and they would camp, on the property, and we would have nature program. And then we would go to their school, and they would share some of the things in their environment with us. And it was just a really nice thing. And we do that in Panama too, when we go to rural areas. It would be nice, we become so comfortable in like our rural area or urban areas. It'd be nice to see an exchange somehow where we could broaden our perspective.
I think that's an important point. And then get more people involved in nature and some of these activities, across different environments and different backgrounds that people have. That's a great idea. Amy, are there questions from the audience at this point?
There are, and I have to say before I get to them, Lori, that is such a great point, and that's what CLCC is here to help with, connecting land trusts with each other and the students that work with them, or the young people that work with them. I mean, we can help with that too and make those connections. So don't hesitate if you have an idea to reach out to us and say, hey, how do we connect with the Keeney Park Sustainability Project or a program that might not be around the corner from you. So great point, Lori. Thank you. I'm going to go through a couple of the questions here. Here's one. It says, how representative, this is to the mentees, how representative are you of your peer groups vis-a-vis love of nature?
Anybody want to start? Sylvie?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Thank you. I mean, I feel like the people that I surround myself with have pretty similar interests to me. So I guess I am representative, but we also have, we enjoy doing outdoor activities and and we all are passionate and outspoken about love and for the environment and how to protect it. So I think more often than not, the groups, like the young people are associated in the groups of similar interests, but I do think in terms of like my broader like graduate program, I think that there were, other perspectives that, especially like in public administration, the environment wasn't necessarily a like very emphasized topic. But I think just, having that perspective in the room is important. And I think most people can relate to that, like the environment, as Herb said, it's a common denominator. So I think that no matter what, somebody can understand, and maybe just seeing somebody advocate for it would make them do the same.
And I wonder, just to add to that question is, how do your peers see a concern about climate change and nature and the environment broadly? Do you see that with a lot of your peers, especially those in high school and then those in graduate school as well? Brendan, how about you?
Well, I represent the majority of people at school that are like doing stuff, like doing activities in the outdoors, including doing the field research with the stocks. Our community service is full of people who like being outdoors and like researching, and I love to do it, and a lot of people that do it with me love to do it too.
Great, thanks. Grace?
I think that in general, there's a lot of support, like from my high school, for climate action. We just had a climate summit and we got 400 kids from our school to attend, but there is less of like, although there's general support, less of like the amount of people willing to go further and like demand change and get involved. So less of like, less kids who feel the urgency and want to put themselves out there, take action.
Thanks, Grace. How about you, Jason? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I am definitely in a very big like environmental justice, climate justice bubble. I feel, but with that, like Herb was saying, like that common denominator being that we all care about providing access to nature, providing access to the environment. And we all sort of just have different ways about going about that, and very different interests in sort of providing that. And I think it's also interesting because I think I'm part of, like the Gen Z millennial border group that like grew up kind of with the internet, but now like everybody has access to it. So it's like, there's no real way of like hiding a lot of like what's going on in terms of like visual environmental challenges anymore. Like we have videos of glaciers melting and causing floods, like we have videos of destructive hurricanes, and we're like sort of, and I was having this conversation the other day that we're sort of like the first generation in general of humans who have been able to consume all of this knowledge all at once, and always had that constant access to it. So I think it's sort of hard to not sort of care about these spaces, but I also acknowledge that I have been in very like privileged environments to have people around me that also care about that. But I think the interesting piece is also like the willingness to learn of people who might not have that access that I have. Anytime I go back home and talk to my friends, my cousins, my family, it's always like, yeah, like tell me more, like tell me what you know about the environment, tell me about what's going on with climate change and how we can take action here in our own communities. And I think that's really, really beautiful. So even if I'm not necessarily representative of everybody's level of access or attainment to knowledge about the environment, I sort of am, at least in my circles, the person who is like opening up the gates or opening up the knowledge banks for individuals that are in my life to have that access as well.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Justin.
To switch gears a little bit, I was curious if any of the students that are on here have advice for us as mentors, like how can we be better at what we do? Because it's not easy, and any tips would be appreciated.
Who wants to go?
Grace, I'm putting you on the hot seat.
I would say, like all the things you all have talked about, like networking and providing opportunities. Of course, like you already are doing that, but maybe stressing the importance to us of like paying attention to these opportunities and taking them, and like trying to get involved with the networking more, because you know, we're not really immersed in this world yet, at least at the high school level. So instead of just being in a club and like following what the teacher says and like carrying out these actions, more of like making sure we know that we can use what we learn now and like who we meet now in the future as networks, stuff like that.
Great, thanks, Grace. Amy, are there more questions?
Sure. Before I ask, is anybody else want to jump in and give their mentor some advice?
Sylvie, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. And I'll say that I think something that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of originally is I think it's important to push your mentee, because as Herb said, there were some things that I wasn't totally comfortable with, but like the outreach and the phone calls as somebody who had no experience. But I think the fact that he pushed me, and I think Jason said something about this in the chat, but he trusted me to do these things, I think really helps me to feel confident, and I've definitely carried that feeling into, you know, the work with CLCC as well. So I think learning the areas to push your mentee in is really important. When like you may see something that they don't, or something along those lines. I just think, obviously not too hard, but just like that, the balance of trusting them and pushing them, and usually I think the outcome is good.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to expand upon that. So yeah, I think I was going to bring up that trust piece again. Like I just really felt like in the role that I was in with the Urban Ecology Wellness Center and Herb, that I just felt trusted to get my work done. You know, there was never sort of like a question of whether or not a deadline was going to be met or a product was going to be positive or good. And if it wasn't, then I just got feedback and fixed it, you know. And it was sort of like there wasn't that like anxiety building that I think a lot of times students feel when we have our normal pressures of, you know, meeting our deadlines, where it was sort of just having that being in this space and knowing that someone trusts you to do good work feels nice, rather than having to just prove that you have to do good work all the time. It sort of just comes natural. It's like trusting the process. Like you've always done good work, you can always do great work. And I think with that as well is sort of having that work-life balance, and having a mentor and a mentee relationship where they're going to understand that, like, yes, I have work to do, and also like I'm a human too. And I think that's something that Herb did a great job at. And like our calls never started off with like, oh, like how was that deadline? Like it was always like, hey, like what's up? Like how was your weekend? You know, and it's little things like that I think a lot of times that we sort of stray from, especially over the past 2 years in like the digital world, where everybody's just so like in and out on Zoom. It's like, all right, let's get in, get out. But like making time for that, like that very interpersonal connection is very, very important.
Wonderful. Anybody else? That's great. It seems to me, in hearing from all of you, this delicate balance between letting your mentees go with and trusting them to do it, but then I do also know that it requires oversight with some gentle hand too. So this is delicate balance, right, between mentoring them along, giving them advice, you know, leading the way, but then also letting you go, which is great. Amy, any more?
Yeah, a couple more, but I just lost my chat, so hold on a minute. Let me get back to it. Well, one of them was, I can't seem to find the chat again, but one of them was, gosh, I'm sorry, I'm struggling here with the pin. So one of the questions had to do with, it was David Bingham's question. If you scroll down, and he wanted to know if your connections with nature have led you to be more politically active and getting more involved with advocacy. Anybody wanna go with that one?
I can start with that one. I think, like, at first, like, I've always had a, connection to nature, but I never really connected the policy piece to it. I think being in being in school of public policy, and then especially working with Amy and how much she lobbies for the open space and watershed acquisition piece, I think that it has really, really taught me the importance of policy as, doing the things that we all want to accomplish. So I think I think being in the nonprofits and working with Amy and Herb, and just like seeing how like grants are important to do the work that we do, and policy as well. So yeah, I think just like seeing it firsthand, like how much it takes to lobby and all the work that's been put into it and all the people behind it, I think it has definitely given me a new appreciation of the need for policy to do all the things that we want to do.
Thank you. Thanks, Sylvie. It's great to hear that. It's very affirming and makes me feel good for sure. I'm back to seeing these chat questions, and this is kind of a nice one here, and that is, what do you all do to recharge? What do you do in nature recreationally? We heard certainly about Brennan's interest in birds, but it'd be nice to hear travel-wise, socially. How do you recharge in nature or otherwise?
Brennan.
Well, for my sport, we have after school activities, and one of the after school activities is hiking. So I partake in hiking a lot, and also some of the birding that I do along the way. And with my skills, I'm able to point out to the rest of the group by saying, "Hey, look, there's that species of bird," and like, "Oh wait, that's that one species of plant."
Great. Thanks, Brian. Okay, so let's talk about some final thoughts to share with the audience. Do you have words of advice to the mentees, encouragement for other students to get involved? What are you thinking about that?
I can go. I guess my advice to the audience would be more to the land trust themselves.
Yeah, great.
And thinking about succession planning. And I don't know if this is only because this is where I am in my process, but I feel like we are, as nonprofits, we are ready to strategically plan all the time, right? The strategic planning processes. But not often do we think about, who's coming next, who's going to carry the torch, how are we engaging people, regularly to be able to kind of step into our shoes when we decide to step aside. So my advice to the audience, if you're a land trust, is to make succession planning a part of, your strategic planning, and engaging young people as a part of that process.
Great. Yeah, Lori.
I think, a lot of land trusts do a lot of great programming for young kids and families, but it would be nice to find a group of committed high school students, with various environmental interests, and get them as a committee on your board or whatnot. Have them help plan activities that, might get their peers on board, that they might find engaging, from a variety of levels. And, start small. It doesn't have to be big, and you don't have to be an expert. But I think more opportunities for engagement for high school kids, might be beneficial too.
Great. Others?
I agree with that, all of those sentiments too. I think that we need to democratize access to all levels of student involvement and engagement, whether it's, on town committees or within land trusts. It doesn't really matter where it's at there. I think there needs to be a student voice and a student perspective, because if we're looking to help the next generation of stewards move forward, we need to have them involved in the process at an early age and help to guide them. And like I said before, there's just so much energy and enthusiasm that comes out of kids, that why wouldn't we want them to be involved,
Well, and as I think a lot of you said, the creativity that comes from just allowing them and trusting them to with their ideas. It's great. Yeah. Others?
I can hop in.
Yeah.
I think one thing in sort of designing some of these programs that engage youth, I think it's really important to consider all levels of access to these programs. So we're talking about, I did a high school internship program with a nonprofit in my city back home on like urban farming. And they provided transportation. They compensated the students. They let us be engaged as much as possible. And because it was an urban farm, at the end of the week, we got to take vegetables home. So finding like unique ways to sort of compensate your students, because high school students should also be paid through this process, especially if they're collecting data for big research projects. And the transportation, also having staff on your organization that are representative of the groups that you're hoping to bring in are really important. And my message to students out there is like, just know your worth, like value your experiences. Don't discount anything that you do, because everything that you do does have value, and it is contributing to like your experience and the value that you bring to an organization. And at the end of the day, like, we're having these conversations about succession planning, like we are the future, and these organizations need us. So we need to state our demands and what we need from these organizations in return.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, Lori.
And Marianne, I just, from an entirely different perspective, I think one impediment to sometimes land trusts getting involved is, a lot of the rules and regulations and working with kids, and that's where UConn NRCA has been a sort of a bridge to help out. That's where I, as a high school teacher, and probably Justin has been a bridge to help out in these things. But I would love to see CLCC come up with a universal sort of training program for land trust volunteers that would help guide them and feel more secure when working with youth.
Great. Yep, Brennan.
I would say my advice is to ask your local land trust or conservation center if they have any internship opportunities or volunteer projects that you'd like to participate in. If these organizations don't have one, then you can share your passions and talents and pitch them a project of your own. For example, if you're into birds and photography, you can ask them if there's one preserve that they have and they would like to document document the birds there using eBird or just your camera to record your discoveries, say for like a month or the summer. We also offer to prepare social media posts for some of your avian discoveries, so that others can learn about what you might see if they visit preserve. The advice I would give to conservation organizations is to make more programs available to specifically geared to teenagers. These experiences might help teenagers discover interests they never knew they had. As for encouragement, do not give up. If you don't know how to do something, there are people and various tools that can help you learn. I did not know how to identify a lot of the birds I saw and or all their songs, but I used field guides and phone apps like Merlin and eBird and Bird Night to help improve my skills over time.
That's great. Thanks, Brennan. I mean, I think what really in my talking to it's that three, it's a relationship between the three, right? It takes some champion at the high school like Justin, or at some of the facilitators like Lori, and then with the organization and to connect with the students. So there is that oversight provided, because I think land trusts are a little bit afraid of, they don't have the resources to provide the oversight and the direction that's needed when they take on interns. But I think with the relationship that you all are showing to have with a faculty member sitting there ready to take that on, it makes it a lot easier. Justin.
Just to add on to that, schools can be kind of a closed system, and a lot of teachers, I've been at it 20 years now, don't really know how to reach out and make some of these connections. So maybe another piece of advice is to try to help facilitate that and reach into the high school and see if you can make connections with teachers, because a lot of them would jump at an opportunity to do something interesting like this. They just don't really know how.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, Jason.
I had one more thought hearing about like the getting involved with school piece, and I think if there are organizations, throughout Connecticut and even my interest in Connecticut that are hoping to get even like grad students and undergrads involved in what as well. I'm at Yale School of the Environment right now. We have these clinic style courses where a bunch of organizations can submit projects and students bid on working on projects. So that might also be an opportunity in reaching out to a clinic course at Yale School of the Environment, or UConn, and I'm pretty sure UConn has them as well, where you can get some students involved in that process of working on a specific project for you for a semester long, and then the next semester you submit a new project, and sort of getting people involved in that way is really important. And I've been on a clinic where I've been working on a community solar project in Brooklyn, which has been a really awesome experience to get to know an organization. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely check out the clinic courses at Yale School of the Environment and some of the other schools in Connecticut to get some grad students and undergrads involved too.
That's great, Jason. That's a good example of there is faculty members at Yale that will oversee some of these projects. So it's kind of a nice relationship between the two. So they're not, thrusting the interns just on to the organization to sort of take care of them. Yeah, great. Anything else from people? All right, Amy, are there more questions? We only have maybe a very short period of time.
I'm not seeing, can you hear me? Every time I click, I have a problem here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. So there's just some wonderful comments in here. And before I close, I'm just going to read the last two. And one of them is from Eric Hammerling, who says, so impressed and inspired by both the mentors and mentees. Great job, everyone. And Connie adds, I have such respect for the effort, integrity of the mentees and the generosity of the mentors. Thank you so much for sharing your stories tonight. And Jason just posted some information about his LinkedIn in there. And I would encourage all of you to, if you're not finding the information about our mentees and our mentors through our website, to just get in touch with us and we can certainly help to connect you. I just, if I could figure out how to, oh, here it is. I just want to thank everybody so much. I have to say that it was probably good that I was not on screen, because I choked up many, many times throughout this conversation tonight, feeling it a little bit right now. I am absolutely inspired and just so grateful to all of you for being here tonight and sharing your experiences individually and more importantly with each other. And to all of you out there, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is a little bit of yet another different kind of conference, and we are so grateful to all of you for hanging in there with us through this strange time that we've been in and working with us virtually through our conferences and having the opportunity on Saturday to join us in person. We look forward to that, and I hope that you can all join us as well. So have a great night, everybody. It's 8 o'clock. We are going to adjourn right on time. And again, thank you to our mentors. Thank you to our mentees. And Marianne, thank you for such an outstanding job in facilitating a wonderful conversation.
Most welcome. It was a wonderful session. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.